But for our next speaker, we have Dinara. Dinara is the Innovation Chair of the International Youth Nuclear Congress. She's an alumna of the current organizer of the Nuclear Innovation Bootcamp, working alongside the Anthropocene Institute to support young climate activists and advocates. Well-respected public speaker and a nuclear technology expert, Dinara holds a doctorate from UC Berkeley and has worked to facilitate collaboration between manufacturers of nuclear power plant equipment from Spain, Italy, Germany, and Russia. Dinara and I even traveled to Egypt last year to represent nuclear energy at COP27. Dinara Ermakova.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you everyone for coming and sharing your time with us to learn more about nuclear, ask some questions. I wanted to tackle, well, first of all, I'm coming from the country which on the map that Vishesh has shared is colored in gray, meaning we emit too much or don't provide any information, but that's part of being part of developing world, is that there's not so many infrastructural opportunities or like information sought to provide like to the global data systems. But the motivation of the talk today is actually to share perspective of those either developing regions or rural communities that we have here in the United States and around the world. So I'm going to talk about coal to nuclear talent transition that actually, vice versa, sorry. It's coal to nuclear talent transition, sorry. And here I wanted to share and start with some numbers. Again, as a scientist, I love numbers. I like to share some stat. Amazing, we're gonna close 173 coal-fired units by 2030. That's great news, we need more of that. The problem with that is that we don't see real people behind that. It feels good about closing the coal power plants, but what about the people who work there? And if we put people into perspective, it's about 1 million workers who are directly employed by fossil fuel industries last year. No matter how you want to decarbonize, you have to think more about what's going to happen with these people, how they're going to live in those communities. And for many people in those communities, the coal plant or gas plant is a one single job providing place. And so they stay in those communities because they have the jobs and they have their kids there, they have schools there. And once there's no more jobs, they just leave the area. And just to put more numbers into perspective, that means it's another 12,000 or up to 34,000 of people getting fired, they're getting notice that the coal plant gonna be closed, and that really gonna hit the local communities. Opportunities like the tax revenue is gonna be reduced. Meaning the school and medical system will be collapsing, and so young people will be leaving the places, and so it will be disproportionately occupied by people who are older and who are going to be using unemployment benefits. So it has tremendous impact on society, on those communities who right now get employed by fossil industry. I'm not advocating for that, but it's just one thing to keep in mind. And this is one part of the problem. How are we gonna decarbonize the economy and secure further pathway for those employees who actually work right now in the fossil industry? And the second problem is actually we have we want our nuclear industry to take the role of decarbonizing power. And there is a big perspective for nuclear to have a role in this clean energy portfolio and take place of those fossil units. So how does it gonna work? US domestic nuclear capacity has a potential to scale up to 3 gigawatt by 2050. That's a big number. So how is it gonna work? I don't know yet. The problem here is we don't have too many people right now. So each gigawatt of current nuclear fleet employs about 600 people at any given year. And if you take into account the site preparation, decommissioning, other operations, that number goes into thousands. So that's a massive amount of people you need to employ, you need to find, train, and send to the site. So that's one of the problem that we have now, is like, biggest problem is not the finding the investments, it's not working with public yet, it's not trying to advocate for it, it's just like finding the workforce that will be working in nuclear. Because historically, because there was a big drop in interest for nuclear for a while among students, right now we have a big gap to cover to build that workforce who will be building further small modular reactors, current fleet, name any. And this is not only in the United States. This is a global problem. It's not only something that we're facing today. So the solution for both problems were to employ the transitioning coal people from the existing fossil fleet, and actually cover some shortage in the nuclear demand for talent is, I guess, is pretty obvious. Transfer the talent, transfer people who already have some skills. Well, most of them have a tremendous experience working in coal or gas plants. They already know how to operate plants. They already know how to maintain them. So they don't need too much training on that front. And also, they have this employment opportunity once the nuclear becoming available in those communities. So I think that's kind of seemed obvious, seemed tangible. How is it going to work, though? And what are the challenges in training or transferring the skills and talent into that nuclear opportunities? Of course, it's hard to tell that it's like one-to-one match when you say, oh, we have coal plant, let's decommission it and bring nuclear online. Well, first of all, it takes long. We know how far behind the nuclear industry in building, in deployment, in small modular reactors. They will be available not today, not tomorrow, in several years. So we have to admit that. And before that, we actually need to think about the pathway, how we're going to match that gap. And just to share with you that today we have to think about the transfer of knowledge. How is it going to work? Who are we going to train? Who will go without training or with small certification, short certification programs, or who needs to be retrained completely? The second, security. That one part is easier to cover because in nuclear power plant, if you're a non-citizen, you probably won't be able to operate a nuclear plant. So, and coal plant workers, you're usually citizens. So it's like easier to cover the security part of the problem, but at the same time, you still need additional level of security training for people who are gonna be working in nuclear plant and who are gonna be guarding the nuclear plant. So those things also have to be taken into account and also properly executed. And another cost related is to actual education. Who's going to pay for that training? Is it going to be a private entity that's going to be providing some certification programs? Or is it going to be government funded training programs? Or is it going to be like some of the funding resourced due to decommissioning coal plant? Maybe they can have some funds developed specifically for retraining, which usually how it should happen if you fire a lot of people, some benefit package such as additional training programs. So there are pathways that we need to think about who's going to pay for this education and retraining. And then how this educational infrastructure will be built. So we don't want to just like take people from one side to another. It's ideal to have people staying in their communities to keep them alive. We have already infrastructure from people who care about their community, who don't want to move to another site. So how is it training gonna work? Is it their short programs to train, or someone's coming to their site providing the training, or there are online opportunities? So all the things you need to think about before you actually start implementing. So I highlight the challenges are not easy to fix. It's not one day solution. It's something that we need to start thinking today, and this is also a very good challenge to solve as an investor, because I think the revenue from building the capacity from this gap on this challenge will be tremendous, and value for society also is hard to imagine how big the impact will be, just providing this opportunity for people from those communities who want to stay in the communities, but because their job opportunities are leaving, it's really hard to think what will be the next step. And there are case studies actually that's been studied by Idaho National Lab. Well, they led the studies, but it was done in collaboration. And just to share some numbers, because it's probably hard to put the things into perspective before you can compare one power plant to another power plant. So in the case studies, what they discovered is that if you replace a large coal plant, which is like 12 megawatt electric, which is like large scale coal plant with 2 units, with about 1 gigawatt capacity nuclear plant, and the difference is intentional because nuclear power plant works at higher capacity, so it produces more electrons per capacity unit. It works 24/7. So the match will be pretty much similar for generation. So in terms of how many, how much of economic activity impact we will have, is that as much as 275 million of economic activity increase, the nuclear construction on existing coal site will bring to the community. This coming as from direct employment, then we will have indirect job opportunities for people who are gonna be working in the community development, in transition, and in infrastructure, in education opportunities. So those indirect jobs plus direct jobs, they will bring such a tremendous impact in terms of economic opportunity. This is increase in tax revenue. That means we can make better schools, we can make better medical system, we can build better roads. This is something that we need to think more, like how we can bring better value for the communities. And at the same time, it will add 650 new employees, 650 per each project. People who already trained as nuclear engineers, who trained in a field, on top of people that we try to retain on those communities who already work in a sector in fossil industry. So I think that's a good numbers to think about. Like, we're not only offering clean energy solution, cleaner air, and better job development, we also provide amazing economic development to the region. And one of the things that I heard while I was talking, I spent some time mentoring people who try to transition from different industries to clean energy industries. What I hear a lot is that, well, I don't have a nuclear engineering background, but I find the industry very interesting. It's it's really ramping up in terms of like startups activities we have, in terms of research development we do. And the thing is that nuclear industry, as much as any other industry, seeks people with various backgrounds, like marketing, PR, economics, operation, and so many other roles that nuclear power industry can employ. So that's not necessarily that you have to have only engineering background. It's helpful, but the opportunities to help with this transition, to help with building a more resilient, clean energy supply chain and clean energy portfolio requires people with various backgrounds. And in those communities, people have different backgrounds and different opportunities. And another point is that in most of the discussions about transition and shutting down nuclear plants, again, as I showed in the first slide, it's very dehumanized. You just see number of coal plants or capacity removed of coal plants, but you don't see the communities behind. And many of those communities, I have to emphasize, they don't have any other job opportunities. They don't have any other projects coming. And when we build other green sources, they don't require 24/7 maintenance people on site in the same amount of people. So those things, they're not taking into account as of now, but I think this is where nuclear power and nuclear power plants can play bigger role. First in this country, in the United States, and then we can spread this experience and I believe big success around the whole globe. With that, I'm gonna show you the last picture. I think this is a very good picture that depicts how nuclear could play a bigger role. And coming back to what Vishesh shared, that will be big in terms of industry development, like where we have hydrogen, well, we'll need high quality heat. And this is where all the communities could benefit, hosting different industry projects and keeping those communities alive. Well, thank you so much for listening to talk. I'm gonna proceed further. We have still people to present.